2008 Lexus LS460 front brake pads and machine rotors. I'm Brian Essick from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you through that process. So we're going to get started by lifting the car up. If you're doing this at home, put it on floor jacks, or jack it up with floor jack and jack stands, and support the car. So we're going to start by removing the wheels. So one of the first things we need to do after getting the wheel off is measure the rotor to make sure it's thick enough to machine. So what you want to do is get your micrometer like so, and you want to measure it in a couple spots around the rotor just to get like an average. And so this rotor is miking out at 1 inch and 149 thousandths. So now we're going to check in our spec it up in this in a called a Bendix brake book, and I kind of underlined it here. And so the minimum machine or discard underneath is as you can see, we're well underneath, so we have plenty of room to machine. But it also indicates that it has a 13-inch rotor and a 14-inch rotor, so we need to determine. I measured it out as a 13-inch rotor, so that was our machine too. So we have plenty to machine on this one. So we're going to proceed to cutting the rotor. Okay, next you need to it's kind of hooked around the pin, so you push it down and unhook it like that. And kind of slide that out of your way. Now you want to take this little clip here and pry that out like that. And the same thing on this side. Pry those out like that. Now you can take this bottom pin and push it out. Push the pin out like that. We'll go ahead and remove the bottom pin. Set the pin aside. And on this clip here, this one here goes in the middle, you just kind of pull it out of the little where it mounts, and then you kind of pull that one out and then pull the whole clip off. Set that aside. Now you can take this one completely out. Set aside. Okay, now that you got that done, you need to remove a little brake fluid from the master cylinder. And the reason why is we're going to compress these pistons back into the bores, and when we do that, we're not going to open the bleeder screws. And what that does is push the brake fluid back into the master cylinder. If the master cylinder is too full, it'll overflow and spill into the engine bay, and so we don't want that. So just remove a little brake fluid, and then what we're going to do next is what you want to do is take a couple pry bars like this and stick it in between the brake pads and pry the pistons back into the bore until both inner and outer pistons are fully seated, like that. And once they're fully seated, then you can remove this pin and slide the brake pads out. So I just pulled the pad indicator sensor out. I just pulled it straight out of the pad and then just slid the pads out. Now you can see the pistons. The pistons are fully seated in the bores, the inner and outer. So now that we got that done, we can go ahead and, if you want to, you can go ahead and remove the brake lining sensor. So that just pops onto the rubber boot, and then right here is a plastic clip that you'll pop out, and then on the back there is a push pin. You just push in and pull up to disconnect. So now we need to remove the 19mm bolt here and the 19mm bolt here, and the whole caliper will come off, and we'll set it on top of the spindle. So now you're ready to take the rotor off, but most likely it's going to be kind of stuck to the hub here. So what you can do is take an 8mm by 125 bolt, and there's in the rotor there's going to be a hole here and a hole here. You can screw it into it, take a little air ratchet or a gun or whatever you want to use, screw it in like this, and it'll pop the rotor free from the hub. So now you can either replace the rotor if you're replacing the rotor, or take it to your brake lathe and machine the rotor. So now that we got the rotors machining here, what you want to do is, if you don't have access to a brake lathe, take it down to your local repair shop and tell them what year, make, model the rotors came from. They'll mic them out for you, make sure that they're thick enough for you if you don't have a mic. And they'll usually charge you a small fee But it's worth doing this for a couple of reasons. One, if there's any imperfections in the rotor warps or anything like that, it will cut that out, and you'll have a nice smooth brake pedal. And also, it drastically reduces the chance of brake squeak. You know, that's pretty annoying, especially on a nice car like this. So I recommend, if you don't have access to a brake lathe, take it down to a shop and have them do it for you. And if you can do this, say if you're doing this at a shop yourself, just set it up on your brake lathe machine. So while the rotors are machining, we can do a little prep work. And what you want to do is, they have these little springs that help keep the tension on the pad and keep them from rattling back and forth in the caliper and making rattle noise. So we need to transfer those over. So they're kind of just held on by these little clips, and they just pry off with your fingers like so, and then they hook into the pad like so. So you want to transfer that over. See if I can do this and film at the same time. So just go ahead and transfer those over. You'll also want to keep track of the inner and outer pad. So that if you look on the, my new brake pads came with the one shim, but it didn't come with the outer shim. So we're going to transfer the outer shim over too. And, we're going to put a little, what they call seal glide, or a lot of the times the brake pads will come with the grease, a special grease just designed for brake pads. So we'll put a thin layer of that on the back of the shim, and then we'll put this shim on, and we'll put a thin layer on this shim here too. So that'll look like this. So you just put a thin layer, and then you put the shim, transfer your shim over, and put a thin layer on this too. Okay, after machining your rotors, I like to just slip it on and then use a lug nut to hold it tight so it's everything's snug in place. So when you go to put your caliper back on, your pads back on, the rotor's not floating around and causing issues and just making your life difficult. So this will help ease some of that. So now after we got the rotor bolted up like that, we're gonna take the caliper and we're gonna bolt it back up. But before we do that, we need to put a little bit of a what they call blue Loctite or thread sealer on the bolts that hold the caliper on. So you just want to put a couple little drops like that on the threads, and this glue helps prevent the bolts from vibrating loose and backing off and causing an issue with the brakes. So the brand we use is called Permanex, but Loctite is another brand. You can get these at any of your local parts stores. So go ahead and put your caliper back on and put your two 19mm bolts down on there and torque them down. Now it's time to put the brake pad back into the caliper. And the one with the clip, so we're going to work on the inner pad first. We're on the driver's side here. So, on the passenger side here, I'm sorry. So what we're going to do is the one with the clip on the bottom of the pad, that's going to go on the, you want that to be on the inner part right here. So, and then you also, on the shim, it's got an arrow. You want that pointing where the direction of it's going upwards with the rotation of the rotor. So go ahead and take that pad and slide it in, and then we'll take the other pad and slide it in. And you also want to make sure the arrow is pointing to the upwards with the direction. Now we can slide in our top pin first. I like to put a little bit of that lube on the pins too. And then also the little hole, the notch, you want that to be facing upwards like this. So when you put the pin in, it'll be facing upwards. And you're going to put that pin in from the back side. And if you could reach around the so if the hole doesn't line up right here, you can reach around, and like I'll show you on this side. So you can reach around like this, and you can push the pad in and out with your fingers to line up the holes. So now it's time to plug in our pad lining sensor. So you go ahead and plug that in, and then put the little clip back into the holder here. We put that back in so it snaps into place. I just put this over the bleeder screw. Now you want to start the pin, but don't put it all the way in. Then you want to take this clip where the ears are pointing upwards like this. So you want to put it in between the pad and the in between the stud, or the pin right here, and then put that through. And go ahead and push your pin through. So you want to make sure it's hooked underneath like that. And Go ahead and push it through. You also want to make sure that hole is pointing upwards. So now that you got it pointed through, you want to take these little ears and stick them in the holes right here. And then this little ear has to go over that little, like that. And you do the same for this side. Okay, now that you got that on, it's time to put this clip back on. So what I like to do is just hook it on the top one here, and you can push it on there. And then you take the bottom one, and you it's kind of like spring-like, so you pull it downwards, and it'll hook over like that, and it'll hook in there at the same time. And you know you got it on tight ones. Now the last step is to put our sensor into the pad. So you want to put it with the little nodule part right here pointing towards the pad. And just push it in. And now we're gonna install this clip. This helps prevent the it stops the pins from sliding back out. This actually keeps it in. So what you want to do is put the first little pin through the hole in the pin, like so, and then wrap around the pin on the outside. And then you'll do the same. If it's off, you might have to twist it. Mine's off a little bit. I have to twist it to line up the hole. So I just use needle nose pliers to twist that. So now you want to stick that in the hole, and then right here you want to flip it over the pin like that, and that's it. That's what holds it in. And now what you want to do is you want to pump your brake pedal until you got a firm pedal. And if you open the bleeder screws for any reason, you'll have to bleed the brakes. After you pump the brake pedal and you got a nice firm pedal, you're pretty much good to go. You don't need to bleed the brakes. If the pedal is spongy in any way, I recommend you bleed the brakes. And that's pretty much completes the brake service on a 2008 Lexus LS460. I'm Brian Essick from How To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos. And as always, it's my pleasure sharing my experience with you. Thank you again. Now you're ready to install your tires and test drives.